Testing.
Thank you, Jennifer. Look at that, 15 seconds late. Very good. Thank you very much. Welcome everybody to the Electoral Area Services Committee today, Wednesday, 19th of July, 2023. And as a form of greeting as well, I acknowledge with gratitude that for thousands of years, the Quw'utsun, Malahat, Subaset, Stumanus, Halalt, Penelakut, Liaxin, Bokachin, Ditidat and Pachidat peoples have walked gently on the unceded territories where we live and work. Our meeting today is being held on the unceded territory of the Quw'utsun and people and Cowichan tribes. So with that, welcome to everybody that's here. From, I think, Director Markman is going to try and join us either online or in person. So we'll carry on without him. Welcome to everybody in the gallery as well. So we'll start off. Mr. Robbins, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before you adopt or approve your agenda, there were two additional business items. IN1, additional answers to questions posed at the June 19, 2023 public information meeting. That was included in an update to PrimeGov. And then R1, which was distributed to you earlier, the supplemental information from Mark Chernopsky and Irene Predicant with regards to the report from the Development Services Division in an application at 13615 Wagon Wheel Drive. So with those, you seek a motion to approve the agenda?
I think, and do I have this approval of the agenda with the addition of the closed or is it one I'm not supposed to? Sorry, it's an old one. Yeah, approval of the agenda. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that?
And moving to the adoption of minutes, that the recommendation that the minutes of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of July 5th, 2023 be adopted.
Adoption of the minutes. Moved, seconded. All those in favour? Any opposed? None opposed.
Nothing under business arising. Moving to public input period. And of course, the purpose of the public input period is to provide the public with an opportunity to comment on an agenda item before the board, before this committee. Public input period procedure policy provides the public input period to proceed in a timely fashion. Public input period items cannot include matters which are or have been the subject of a public hearing. And the policy provides 15 minutes in total for this input period.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. And public input period. Anyone step up to the mic?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I'm Cliff Evans from Shawnigan Lake and Director of the Shawnigan Basin Society. This afternoon, I'd like to give congratulations and kudos to Ian McDonald for averting a major public consultation in our Area B by stopping a monster truck rally. And this is really good. I think our bylaw officers need to be given credit, and we realize that it's a whole team, that you two here as directors have to support him. And this has worked out really well. The Basin Society also takes direct action, sometimes proactive, and we will look to see where water or the environment is being hurt, and then we will take action. I was hoping, we do have a photo up. A few days ago, not a few days ago, a couple of months ago, we were doing our inspections and went to not an abandoned, but closed down gravel pit. And as you can see by the photo here, this is the way they left their shop. There's oil on the ground and oil cartridges, and all this goes into our aquifer. We're drinking this water from our aquifer. So when we see something like this, right away, we know that if it's in a mine, it's hard for our bylaw officers to do anything. But we can phone RAP at 1-877-952, and boy, they will really take action. We phoned RAP, and this is that site afterwards. They made them take out all the oil, contaminated gravel and soil, and there were loads and loads of construction waste in there. And RAP made them take it all out. This way we can avert getting bad drinking water. And in the past, we've had pollution coming from this site where we had dead coho fry coming down the creek. So we always have to take action right away if we see anything like this. RAP will not reveal who you are, and you can maybe save our environment. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Evans, and it's always nice to hear some kudos given to our staff, Mr. MacDonald and his staff. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for the pictures as well. They illustrate a lot. So, public input period, folks. Would you like to step up to the microphone, sir?
Thank you. My name is Dan Carrot, and I'm a resident of Cowichan Bay. I'm speaking with you today regarding the variance permit application for 4598 Sparwood Road that was recently referred to the Area Planning Commission. I attended that meeting on June 22nd, and I must say I found it to be instructive, but also frustrating and disappointing. And here's why. One, as attendees, we could not participate. The applicants made a lengthy presentation and many times referenced the community's written submissions, including their interpretation of them. It appeared that community correspondence to the APC had been shared with the applicants prior to the meeting, and I think that to maintain a balance of input, it should not have been. CVRD bylaw 4408 only requires that, quote, an APC will hear all applicants who wish to make representations on an application referred to it by the general manager, board, or director, close quote. There is no requirement to share community input with the applicant, and in my opinion, the applicant is able to speak to community input in their presentation. If the applicant is able to speak, then the community should be allowed to participate and allowed a rebuttal opportunity. In my nearly 40 years of human resources work with employers across Canada, with over 30 at the senior and executive level, a fundamental tenet of business ethics in all these organizations was to take all responsible steps to avoid conflicts of interest, including what may be perceived as a conflict of interest. In my view, that tenet was not observed at the APC meeting. It's my understanding that the chair of the Area D APC, Joe Kinraid, is an employee of the firm Kenyon Wilson. He's the proponent on the subject application, and his services were retained by...
Point of order. Point of order, please.
In public input, we do not allow allegations or of the likes of that may impinge on the character of either members around this board or members that serve on committees or commissions.
Understood. Can you take some notice of that one, please, sir?
I'm just making the factual point from my observation that his being 'Being' 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 'Be The other thing was comments were made by some commission members to the effect they wondered why a meeting was even necessary, as the application appeared to be straightforward, and they directed their apparent displeasure towards Director Abbott, who was also in attendance. A comment was expressed by one of the commission members that the variances sought were minor, and there was a further comment by a commission member that the variance application was, quote, being confused with silly water issues. I felt those comments were pretty dismissive, inaccurate, and inconsistent with the APC's mandate to represent all Area D citizens. Also during the APC meeting, the 8 churches shared how they came to acquire sewer permits in 2019 for the 2 additional lots they were proposing to develop. They said they learned about the permit availability during a discussion at the mailbox, and it seems the new owners of Wilkema Lodge had surrendered 9 or 10 sewer permits to the CVRD previously assigned to the lodge.
Sir, your 3 minutes is expired.
I'm showing 25 seconds remaining.
I'm sorry, okay. I'm sorry.
The 8 churches attended the CVRD offices the next day and they acquired their permits. That process kind of begs some questions. How is it possible for an applicant seeking to subdivide a property to acquire sewer permits as described? Had no one else applied for permits? And is there a formal process that is in place? And finally, while Mr. Gray might think it's a silly issue, I can assure you that the 177 users in Lambourne Estates Water and Sewer who do not enjoy clear, untainted water would disagree with him. You recently approved a permit to add 6 lots to the 5 already approved at 1205 Sutherland, despite the fact that 80% of Lambourne water users signed a petition urging you not to. Today, you are once again considering an application to add more users to an already underserviced and overburdened system, and I implore you to reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anybody else for public input, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Darcy Gullickson. I live at 4578 Polo Field Place. It's on the Lambourne water system. I fully agree with the gentleman who was talking just in front of me. It seems to me that the democratic system that Canada operates on is being flouted here. When you have 80% of the people signing a petition against adding people to an already overburdened water system, and that's already occurred, and now today considering adding additional lots, and these lots are all large lots. They're like half-acre lots. So you're going to be using a lot more water to maintain the landscaping on those lots. Even if you try to go with a natural look, it's still going to have something around the house that would be much different than adding, say, 18 people in an apartment. Anyway, I would ask reconsideration be taken for these things, because I grew up in a democracy and I really hate to see things rammed down my throat. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, sir. Anybody else for public input? Step forward, sir.
Good afternoon, Chair. My name is Mark Chernopsky. I lived with my wife at 4581 Sparwood since 2009. We moved there for the serene atmosphere and semi-rural atmosphere of the community. I submitted a letter of opposition to this variance at the May meeting, and I also submitted one today to back it up. Previously, I don't know whether it read into the record or not, but the one from May 27th quite succinctly describes me and my wife's opinion that this variance is a precedent to allow more developers to use a slow move approach or a slow way around bylaws that are designed for all of us to live in a community under cooperation and environmental protection. Through 10 years or nearly a decade, the 8 churches have slowly developed the lot as a point of a single lot. Everything they have done has been allowed in development of a single lot. And now at the end of this, they say that we've done this many assets in place. All we need is a variance to make 2 properties saleable. To me, it looks like, as I said, a slow way around a process that's built to protect us. And if they had tried this at one time in 2013 when they first moved in, I'm quite sure there would have been more eyes upon it as being a little invasive, looking at the context of the neighborhood and where it sits. Where we are, we have 2 trailer parks within a kilometer. We have, meaning high density on Lanes Road. They also built, I believe it's 12 homes, all within the minimal requirements for medium density occupation. I believe Area D, Hillary Abbott, has been an advocate for shared development, yet reasonable and environmental protective development. And I also appreciate the second in the May 17th meeting from Mr. McClinton on forwarding it to the APC. I was unable to attend that, but at the same time, I can only say that now we are here, and once again, me and my wife put our opposition towards this only because of the scope of it. We deny no one the ability to build their dream. We only ask that they build their dream in the context of the bylaws that are here to protect us all and to serve us all as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Janowski. Any further members of the public like to step forward for public input? Come ahead, sir.
Thank you. It's Kevin Marr, 4588 Sparwood Road. Obviously, I'm discussing the Sparwood Road application where our property is 3 houses removed from the applicants. I would like to speak about the effect that this has on our property, our sight lines, traffic, and all that stuff. But I've only got 3 minutes, so I'd actually like to speak to something a little larger. I sat on the Cowichan Bay Advisory Planning Committee, APC, for 15 years. I resigned about a year ago. And there's something here that I think is actually much more worthy of a big picture concern. When the applicants bought the property, it was bare land. They could have developed it any way they want. And they chose to designate a very small parcel line very, very far away from where they wanted to build as the front parcel line. And what that allowed them to do, and I have no issue with this, is build the largest house they could with the best view they could. And they did that by designating Sparwood Road as the side of the parcel line. No problem at all. But they took advantage of the building bylaws to do what they wanted to do. Now, what they're really asking to do is, with a bit of a sleight of hand, play musical parcel lines and say, no, we'd actually like this the front parcel line, but we need a variance to do that. What in reality they're doing is they're going to have no front parcel line setback at all. And this is a precedent I think you want to really think hard about before you approve. There's a lot of other developers in the area that are, I'm sure, watching this very closely. The applicants could have built a smaller house that's same size but 2 stories. They could have not put the garage on the side of their house. They could have done all kinds of things to build their dream house and still allow for future subdivision, but they didn't. In 15 years on an APC, I heard a lot of reasons for a variance request. Poor planning of a development by the developer I had never seen before. And we're here because fundamentally they didn't plan this out very well, and now we're expected to, the community is expected to bear the cost of that. And I think that's a precedent you want to think very hard about before you approve. The other thing I'd just like to say is what made this possible, and someone touched on it, is sewer units. Sewer units are what define development in CVRD, but in Cowichan Bay in particular. And currently, and for years, they've been traded like an unregulated stock in coffee shops and mailboxes. There's an elderly gentleman who's been trying to get on the sewer system on the same road. For 10 years, he's been unable to. And there's another couple with a failing septic system, and they can't get on it. And the inability, the private transactioning of these sewer units is actually preventing you, the CVRD, from implementing smart growth or orderly growth, because you try and develop somewhere, there's no sewer units, and suddenly there's a development somewhere else because someone bought them in a coffee shop. So this is something I also think you really want to think about with this application, the precedent for it. I'd like to speak about the negative aspects of me personally living in the house, but I got 23 seconds left, and I would prefer to use my time to make you think about the big picture implications of this application going forward for the community, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Maher. And I'm going to address the first applicant. I do apologise for trying to cut you off short with your 25 seconds left because I was reading the wrong readout here. So apologies for that, sir. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Maher.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else for public input? Anyone online? Is there, Patrick?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. And we'll move on to the next, which is number 5, delegations.
Which we have no delegations for you today. Moving to correspondence, there is one piece. It's a grant and aid request in Electoral Area A, Mill Bay Malahat, with regards to RCM SAR 34 Marine Rescue Society. It's a request for a grant and aid. There's a recommendation.
Area A, turn to the director, Director Segal. Oh, moving and seconded. Go ahead.
Just wanted to bring it to the attention that there could be a perceived conflict of interest since my husband is a volunteer on the association, but there is no compensation given to him.
Good. Thank you very much. So we vote on that. Or did we do? Moved and seconded. All those in favour? Any opposed? None opposed? That is approved. Thank you.
And moving to Section 7 was an addition to your agenda yesterday. It is supplementing the meeting with regards to the public meeting. So this is just for your information, additional information and answering questions that came up at the public information meeting.
This item is for information only. Director Nicholson.
On behalf of Director Martman, he would like to thank staff very much for their hard work on this and request that it be posted to the Plan Your Cowichan page, planning page, if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Nicholson. Any comment on that from staff? Approved? Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay.
It's already on the page, and yesterday when the supplemental was sent to you as well, it was put on the webpage as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's for information only. And Director Morrison, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's great to, we've had Mr. Evans lead off with kudos to one of our staff, but I wasn't in attendance for the full public information meeting, but had the opportunity to review the late answers that came through staff. And I think this particular public hearing, the participation from the community, I know Director Martman's not here and would probably like to hear this, but I think the public participation, the exemplary job done by staff at many levels, from the handling of the questions to the MC, was I think that's a real good shining example and benchmark of the type of meetings that we want to have, and I think also shows the caliber of staff that we have within this organization, and I think kudos to all around to those that were participants and organizers of that event. It was, I think, very well done. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was well done. And I see that the presenter is not here at the moment, but no, the presenter did a great job. Thank you very much to all the staff. Any more comments on that? Seeing none, Mr. Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving to reports. R1 is a report from the Development Services Division with regards to application DVP 23D01. That's 4598 Sparwood Road.
Hello, Chloe.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Perfect. Okay. So the application before you is the variance application for property 4598 Sparwood Road to allow for a 3-lot conventional subdivision. You may remember this application as it was previously presented at the May 17th EASC meeting. The property is located in Cowichan Bay at the intersection of Sparwood Road and Lanes Road. The applicants are proposing to subdivide the property into 3 lots, which will shift the front parcel line as defined in the Electoral Area D zoning bylaw from Lanes Road to Sparwood Road for Lot A and Rem Lot 1. The subdivision must not create any non-compliance with the zoning bylaw. Therefore, for the subdivision to proceed, the following variances are requested. To reduce the front parcel line from 7.5 meters to 4.5 meters for an existing single-family dwelling, to reduce the front parcel line for setback from 7.5 meters to 4.5 meters for an existing garage and future residential construction on proposed Lot A, to increase the building floor area from 25 square meters to 67 square meters to allow for the accessory building to remain on Lot A after subdivision, and to reduce the watercourse setback from 15 meters to 11.7 meters for an existing residential accessory building. At the previous EASC meeting, the staff recommendation was for approval. However, the EASC passed a motion to refer the application to the APC for Area D for comment. The Area D APC meeting occurred on June 22nd, and a motion was passed to support the application. Staff understand that there are serious concerns of the public related to the overall subdivision, and these concerns are all valid. However, many of these concerns are not related to the variances being requested, which are specific to the setback reductions for the front parcel line requested in this application. The staff recommendation remains the same, that the variance be approved and issued.
Thank you, Ms.
The applicants are in the room as
Thank you,
well.
Ms. Boyle. The applicants, do we have any comments from them? Would you like to add anything?
Thank you. Hello, my name is David A. Church. My wife Marion and I live in Cowichan Bay and are here to answer any of your questions. At a previous EASC meeting on May 17th, Chloe Boyle presented the 4 variances for our proposed subdivision at our property on Sparwood Road in Cowichan Bay. The staff at CVRD have thoroughly vetted the property. Their report indicate and provide a planning analysis of zonings, environmental, natural hazard, and developmental permit considerations. The staff considers the request for the variances to be reasonable. The change of front property line does not negatively impact the community, nor pose any hazard risk or negative environmental impact. The neighbors have not studied the environmental and geotechnical reports that we had done by professionals at the CVRD's request. We placed the 4x8-foot sign at the edge of the property 7 months ago. Many of our neighbors had voiced their approval of the variances and subdivision, but a few neighbors who wrote to the CVRD have voiced negative concerns. Unfortunately, those negative concerns did not concentrate on the variances that should have been their focus. As Director Abbott stated at the May 17th meeting, the neighbors who were vociferous in their concern had caught his attention. Before and after the May 17th meeting, Chloe Boyle for the CVRD has tirelessly and patiently addressed the misinformation and the authentic concerns. We are speaking today to address the incorrect assumptions from the neighbors. We are not adding any driveways to Sparwood Road. We are not stopping a trail being built on a road allowance, and we do not have a green belt east of our property for cougars and bears. We are not making a building lot that is smaller than allowed. We are not responsible for the high manganese content in the community water, and we are not responsible for the rough surface of the road. After the May 17 meeting, the motion to approve the variances was referred to the Cowichan Bay Advisory Planning Commission. On June 22nd, they gave their immediate unanimous approval. The first variance is to reduce the front parcel line setback to 4.5 meters for an existing garage and future residence on proposed Lot A. On May 15th, 2019, John Munn, CVRD Planner 2, issued a development permit for the A Church property to site the accessory building measured 30 feet by 24 feet, no more than 5 meters from the Sparwood Road west property line. The CVRD is now asking approval for a variance that John Munn, the planner, sanctioned in 2019. For the second variance, it is noted that the existing buildings were cited legally, as Lanes Road had to be the front of the property. Now the proposed subdivision will change the front of the property, and with the approval of the variances, the existing buildings will be compliant. The third variance is to reduce the watercourse setback from 15 meters to 11.7 meters for a pool shed. Our geotechnical engineer reported on March 13th, 2023, that the pool shed does not pose an increased geohazard risk. The purpose of the pool shed is to muffle the noise of the pump. The fourth variance is to increase the accessory building floor area to allow the existing garage to remain on Lot A after subdivision without a principal building on the property. After the subdivision is approved, we plan to build a primary residence beside the garage. In conclusion, we have addressed each of the variances with clear argument. We hope the Electoral Area Services Commission will approve Report 1, that is to issue the development variance permit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I'm going to turn, first of all, to the director of the area, Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. In light of what we've heard today and received in written submission from members of the community close to this property, I feel the applicant's proposal is not in the community's best interest. Therefore, I cannot accept the request for these variances. Accordingly, I move that development variance permit number DVP 23D01 be denied.
Thank you, Director Abbott. I have next on my speakers list, Director Morris. Oh, okay, sorry, my mistake. Director moved and seconded. So before we move on, I'm going to take a vote or let you speak on those. Go ahead, because I know I'm making a mess here. Yeah. Moved and seconded, discussion. Director Morrison, sorry.
Thank you. I've actually got some questions for staff, so with some latitude. So through to Ms. Boyle, you know, there was an interesting question brought up in the public input around slow development technique, and it's not new and we've seen it before. And it just seems to me that there have been fairly significant changes in and I'm not sure whether it's been the Area D zoning, but I know that there's been new growth containment boundaries established over a number of years, that there's been specific intent to densify in certain areas. And so it may be an unfair question, but has there been any regulatory policy zoning changes that you see that have happened in that period of time of ownership that the individual has had this property until now that would lend itself to approval of, and I know it's denial is on the floor, but the environment has changed. And so is there anything that you can point to, or perhaps some of our long-range planning folks that is supportive of this from the time of ownership of the property?
Thank you, Director Morrison. Sorry, Ms. Boyle.
Through the chair to Director Morrison. So, I mean, I can speak to the current official community plan, and it is within the growth containment boundary. It is within the service area, the existing service area of the Lamburn Estates water and sewer service, has units allocated. The OCP allows for a density of 5 to 15 units per hectare, and the applicant is proposing 3.75 units per hectare. So it's actually quite a bit below the official community plan designation, but that's because the zoning bylaw has not been updated to meet the higher density that's proposed in the land use designation.
Follow up?
So just as a follow-up, and I acknowledge the director for the area moving denial of this application, and I bring a sense of concern in that, you know, there's permitted uses allowed in zoning in specific areas, and there is significant pressure across the province to build homes and to help to bring supply to the market to increase affordability for our kids and grandkids into the future. And, you know, I look at an application like this, and I'm hearing the members of the public, the neighbors, the directors, who are having concerns, and yet I can tell you that we're expecting the provincial government in the fall to bring forward regulation that maybe not in electoral areas, but in municipalities, they may actually take this decision out of our hands, and it'll be automatically approved. So I'm just raising that as a point of concern, is that when we say no, we are not helping the problem, we're contributing to it, in that there will be circumstances where it can be done, and this is just a variance. There's room, there's permission in the density to move forward on this. So consider very carefully, as I'm doing right now, I'm not indicating which way I'm gonna vote at this point, but this is an overarching, somebody mentioned big picture, there's a really big picture issue that we need to address here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've got, if I could, I'm going to go to Director Acton next. She's next on my list, and I'll come back to you, Director Abbott. Thank you.
Who are you pointing at? Just two questions. Can you re-explain what you just said about the zoning bylaw? And is it true that there's people who have applied to be on this system and they can't get on it?
Through the chair to Director Acton. So the zoning bylaw currently permits a density of a density in terms of parcel size of 0.2 hectare minimum lot size. So that's, I don't have the exact numbers, but it's approximately 3 units per, no, probably more like 4 units per hectare. The current OCP designation allows for 5 to 15 units per hectare. So that's a much higher density that's being proposed now. So the current zoning bylaw, the reason they're allowed to do this and it's not in, you know, compliance with the OCP designation is because the zoning bylaw, it's not been modernized yet to meet that higher density that would be permitted.
So what OCP has that, like the new
current
modernized one, or?
Nope, the current existing one.
So then it was already existing before we harmonized all the.
Yeah.
Then I'm confused. Why isn't there a zoning bylaw that matches that?
I'm not sure. I can't answer that.
Okay. Because obviously it's been like that for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. And then is it true that that there's people applying to be on the system and they can't get approval?
Through the chair to Director Acton, maybe I will leave that to the manager of water utilities division to speak to water and sewer allocation.
May I speak, Mr. Chair?
Of course, yeah,
So
go ahead.
just for the clarity of the committee, the existing zoning does permit a subdivision into 3 lots. So that's not the issue. So an applicant who is in a property or in a zone that has that ability to subdivide to 3 lots, they make their application to the province, to the provincial approving authority. They meet their requirements. They comply with our zoning. They can proceed with the subdivision. In this case, they're in the water. They're already in the water and sewer service areas. So the issue is, it's not about that. What it's about is that in order to get a subdivision, they have to comply with all regional district bylaws. And so we have bylaws that specify the setbacks that are required to buildings. And so what's being requested is that the variances to the setbacks be allowed so that that subdivision could proceed. If there were no buildings on this property, the subdivision would proceed because, you know, you can create those lots without any variances, right? So that's what's being discussed. The issue about sewer units, I think, yes, as Ms. Boyle noted, needs to be sort of addressed by the Utilities Division, because that's a much more, I think, complicated issue. But what's being presented to you is the variance question.
Variance,
That's the focus.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to, apologies, Director Abbott, I'm going to go to Director Nicholson. I forgot to add her name to the list there. Director Nicholson, did you?
Well, thank you. I would like to hear from staff about how they apportion these water and sewer units.
Is there anyone that can address that, Ms. Boyle?
Through the chair, I believe the manager of Utilities Division is here.
Hi, thank you. Through the chair to the director. The units for this proposed subdivision were allocated through an internal referral process in 2020. So application is referred internally from land use services to utilities based on whether there are units available or not. So in 2020, those were allocated and set aside. We have had subsequent requests for additional units through other properties, and those have been denied based on applications similar to this one that are in process, and we have to keep in mind units that have been allocated as part of applications in process to what's available.
Thank you. Director Abbott. Sorry, Director Nicholson, are you finished? Okay, Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. I defer to my esteemed director from the Lake about accommodation and the need in this province for more accommodation. I appreciate that senior levels of government want more houses, but I think they want more affordable houses. And I contend that what's being proposed here will not address the affordability issue. And if I may, a second matter, our own website talks about variances that have all efforts been made by the applicant to exhaust those efforts to avoid needing a variance. Something like a pool shed that's in a possible riparian zone or in an ecological zone. Excuse me, I guess a pool shed could be moved. I might have the wrong terminology, Ms. A. Church, but the pool shed, that's not exhausting, but it's asking for a variance. And I think some of the public input has already made it quite evident that this is a beautifully designed house on the land as it was, and it's now not as convenient should the applicants proceed with a 3-lot simple subdivision.
Thank you, Director Abbott. Director McClinton.
I'm struggling with this one a lot. I'm trying to reconcile, a unanimous vote from the APC. When I saw that, I have to admit I didn't read through those minutes, and now having a past APC chair stand up and speak to us. I'm just, first, I'm actually going to come back to that because I think that's the more difficult question. Regarding the OPC, is the harmonized OPC, is that going to be increasing or decreasing density? I know it's a little early to tell, but I'm just wondering where this conflict, not conflict, but where, where is there maybe a misunderstanding about where the density is going?
Ms. Boyle.
Through the chair to Director McClinton, I'm not sure I totally understand.
Let me try to ask that again. So we're going through a process of updating our official community plans. I haven't looked through the one specific to Cowichan Bay. Is the plan density going to be changing either less or more based on, the feedback we've gotten from the community?
Through the chair to Director McClinton, in this application, I've been referring to the current OCP policies and designation, just because the decision is right now. So I don't actually know. I don't know if Ms. Breen is on the call who might be able to speak to that, or Ms. Garnett. I imagine it would be increasing because it's within an area that's already identified as the gross containment boundary, and for most of our entire region, the density within the growth containment boundaries will be increased, the permitted density within the modernization of the official community plan, just to allow for the increase in population within our region and the need for housing. But that is my guess.
That's fair. And then I guess, can we at least, I don't know if this is even possible, speak to what some of the comments were made in the minutes from the APC? Like, is there a general tone from the minutes? Is that possible? Again, I'm probably asking you a very difficult question.
Through the chair to Director McClinton, I'm not sure what's meant by general tone. So I unfortunately had a prior engagement, so was not at the APC meeting. I know that the chair of the meeting was the applicant, which was a point of contention for potential conflict of interest. Unfortunately, he could not recuse himself from the beginning since he was the previous chair and he had, there had to be an election and it was all new APC members. So they ran through the election and then he recused himself completely throughout the discussion and the decision and voting on the application itself. So he did have to be there because he was the previous chair and had to organize the meeting, but he eliminated the conflict of interest as best he could.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little bit into the weeds here with asking Ms. Boyle some questions that you're obviously not comfortable with. So let's stay on track here. Director Abbott, you're next on the list.
I was at the ACP, and I was also on the OCP for Area D, which won an award. It is a model OCP, which forms a good backbone for the modernized. Very proud of it, but as one of our public contributors this afternoon has already mentioned that the APC was more or less an opportunity for the applicants to rebut all of the presentations offered. And I'd just like to say that the glowing and very simple minutes that came out of the APC wasn't quite what I saw, and there was one other matter that a specific motion which I'd like to talk to after we vote on this, and it deals with the allocation of sewage.
Thank you, Director Abbott. But Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to be supporting the director of the area on this. I know that this is a challenging question, and there's two sides to it, and the things that I'm personally focusing on are the fact that we have a previous chair here from the APC, so has a good understanding of the community, and represented well Director Yanni DiNardo, and I believe that both Director Yanni DiNardo and Director Abbott have a good sense of their community. We rarely see this kind of turnout on a variance that's usually pretty minor. And this was something that I think I had suggested be referred to staff as like just this kind of variance as the approving authority. But in this case, it's clearly not supported by the direct neighbors, and we are seeing lots of people come forward with that, and I can't support just on the fact of development, or that the province is going to do something, or anyway. So I'm just looking to what the community has stated and has come out and shown their opposition to this, and I will not be supporting the variance.
Thank you, Director Acton. Ms. Boyle, I think you have maybe one final thing to say. There was that...
To Director, I may have lost my train of thought, but from a planning perspective, the OCP policies support this application. The community concerns, I am not saying those are not valid, but those are related to water and sewer and environmental protection and parks dedication and density, and I have not heard valid concerns about why these buildings cannot continue to exist at the location they currently exist at. The one concern I have heard that is directly related to this is the potential for precedent setting. But as you know, every development application that comes to us is assessed and reviewed by the planner based on its own merits and the current policies and bylaws that we have in place. We do not have precedent in this region.
Good. Thank you very much, Ms. Boyle. Okay. Oh, Director Nicholson.
Through to you to Ms. Boyle. Is it possible to subdivide this into 2 lots without a variance application? So they can't do any subdivision at all unless there's some sort of variance?
Through the chair to Director Nicholson, no. Because unless they create very narrow, unbuildable lots, which would mean that the front parcel line definition would result in Lanes Road continuing to be the front parcel line, which would be really not conducive to future construction. The property owners, any subdivision will result in Sparwood Road becoming the front parcel line for the single-family dwelling and require a variance.
Thank you, Ms. Boyle.
May I follow up?
Of course.
Could I have a question for the applicant?
Go ahead.
If that's possible.
Is the applicant allowed to answer a question here? I'll allow that.
Thank you. I am curious whether did you consider subdividing when you started down this road? I mean, why are we in this mess?
What a great question. Thank you very much. If you don't mind, I'll take 1 minute to answer it. When we purchased the property, we had fully intended to subdivide it. I'm not a young man anymore, and this was our perfect opportunity to build a house we wanted to live in and probably be carried out of. However, I am now not able to keep up the property, so we moved to Plan B. We had told everybody we were going to subdivide, and so this was our attempt. Somebody said how long it took to get there, and this is a lengthy, sneaky process. We were denied water and sewer for 3.5 years. That's why it took so long. And then our application sat on a desk of somebody who had left the CVRD, and nobody told us. So for 4 months, we thought our application was being looked at, and it sat on a desk because the lady in question had left, okay? So again, that's the difference. Now when we get a chance to move ahead, yes, I was very lucky to hear the person who bought a property from a lady who had stockpiled sewer and water. She had 18 units, I believe, set up. I'm not sure the property was close. And then she said, well, she sold it. The next guy said, I don't need this many. I'm turning them back in. Bang, where do you think I'm going the next day? I'm right here. Okay, I've been waiting 3.5 years. You told me I was close. And so he said, yeah, you're right. Okay, you get your sewer and water. Yay. Next step, take it to the CVRD Planning Commission. I did everything, everything they asked for, all the way up. Yes, we had permission to put the garage where we put it. Yes, we had permission to do this. Yes, we have a permit to do that. And suddenly, our pool shed is about 3 meters too close to the line. Okay, we bring in a geotechnical advisor for the 3rd time who says it's not going to damage anything. It's already on concrete. There's no reason that it has to be moved. CVRD, through Ms. Boyle, said, you're right. We unanimously support your argument. So, waiting for the next hoop. No more hoops come. Ms. Boyle says, I think we're ready to proceed. We get a hoop to jump through from our local area representative. So we jump through that hoop. We go to the next meeting, and they're almost apologetic. They say, why are we here?
This is not a valid concern. All of these things that we've heard about are nothing to do with variances. Why are we here? And they said, okay, motion to accept, bang, they all said yes, out we go, and suddenly we're back to square one again. So I'm not quite sure what the problem is, unless my neighbors don't like me anymore, if indeed they did. So I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. We did say right at the start, we are going to subdivide in the future, okay?
I understand that, but did you understand that you would have to apply for all these variances in order to subdivide?
No, we didn't understand that, because for one thing, when I applied for the permit to build the garage, the planner.
Can I just interject here? We're getting into a debate here, Director
Oh,
Nicholson.
sorry.
No, it's nothing to do with you. I think I'm going to call the question in a minute because there's been a lot of discussion here. This is a toughie. There's no two ways about it. But I have to say here that this is about a variance, and I would love to take everything into consideration. But the question is the variance here, and I'm going to call the question on what. Okay, to finish.
Well, if anyone wants to speak, I think we should let them, but, sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, it's okay. I'm taking advice from someone else here.
I'd just like to say that a variance it's here because it's a gray area. And so we have the ability to approve a variance or to deny it. So, and there's several here, so.
Okay.
I'm going to
Hang on,
vote for
all
deny.
sorts of hands going up here now. Director Segal, you haven't spoken yet.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking for clarification, maybe from Director Abbott, the reasons provided to deny this application. If you could just clarify my head on that.
I'm going to allow Director Abbott to respond to that. Go ahead. But remember, I don't want to get into a back and forth here, okay?
My reasons are the community's reluctance to see this happen, the community's sense of what was supposed to happen back from 2012 to what's transpired around the mailboxes, the entire process of being able to trade units, to trade community assets in this fashion. It's peculiar. The fact that all efforts to exhaust the variances weren't explored. And yeah, the applicants have noticed that there's a considerable amount of resistance from the neighbors. And that's what compelled me to call upon send this back to the APC. I was a bit gobsmacked as a former longtime serving member of the APC to watch the process. And yes, it was quite dismissive from one developer who said, why are we even here? Another person said, this is just a silly water matter. This proposal needs to go back to the drawing board. I wonder whether a simple two-lot subdivision would have gone through a simpler. I wonder whether had the applicants planned thoroughly for building their auxiliary building, their garage, maybe they would have sited it closer to the existing house, the new house. So there are so many factors that is why at this stage I have made the motion to deny all of the variances.
Thank you, Director Abbott. Director McClinton.
Yeah, just to speak to this is definitely a tough one. I agree with my colleague, Director Acton. I'll reluctantly be supporting the denial of this permit, but I would very much encourage the applicant to come back with an application that has had the consultation of the community. This is the variances are there for us to use our judgments for, and to hear the comments, I just would be very uneasy, moving this forward, and that's it.
Thank you. Director Morrison, hopefully to finish.
So just bringing a little light to this, and we heard information and public input, and I've sort of been concerned ever since I heard some of the comments made during public input about a couple of the misconceptions that there might be surrounding advisory planning commissions. It's not a democratic process. It's dictated to us by legislation. And no, the public can't participate, and the members on the APC are a representative sample of members of the community. They do not represent the community. That guy there does. And so it's a constrained process. And our minutes are constrained because everybody has a different opinion or perspective as to what was said by, Betty Ann or Billy Joe or whoever at the meeting. So we get motions, and the motions are the input to us. And it kind of causes me a little bit of concern because we generally don't refer variances to our APCs. And we do so sort of advisedly because of the very technical nature, and what comes up is kind of what came up. Lots of stuff that didn't have anything to do with the variance. And they were impassionedly presented by members of the public, but really didn't have anything to do with the variance. So I note that it was referred, and we supported the director in referring this application to the APC, and the APC came back with a full-throated, we endorse this. So we've got an APC who doesn't normally weigh in endorsing it. We've got staff endorsing it. And I can understand the director's, perspective in putting forward option 2, but I'm going to remind everyone, we have a board of variance for a reason. And this seems to feel like one of those ones that they don't have to come back with a new application. They just got to go to the board of variance, and we can be overruled just like that. So consider that in your vote. Thanks.
It's a toughie. The motion on the floor is option 2, which is to deny this variance. So I'm going to call a question on that. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those opposed? 2 opposed, Morrison and Seagal, and I don't see Director Markman anywhere there. No. Okay. So that is approved. That option 2, which is to deny. I understand now that Director Abbott has another motion to bring forward.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to offer a supplemental motion that staff be requested to review the Cowichan Bay Sewer Servicing Policy 2015 and provide a report to the EASC on the allocation and availability of sewage units in Area D.
Seconded. And discussion.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Maybe somebody can answer this. I thought that there was a request of like how the process is of allocating any of the either the water or sewer systems in general in the CVRD. Is that correct?
Mr. Tippett, did I see your hand up there? No?
I'm thinking something else. Okay.
There was reference after the APC on June 22nd. The APC added this supplemental motion.
Okay.
Maybe that's what you're...
Okay. Director Morrison. Sorry. Question? Call the question. All those in favour? Any opposed? None opposed. That is approved. Thank you, Director Abbott. So that concludes R1. Thank you, Ms. Boyle. Yeah, let's have a let's have a 7-minute break. We cover all, because I will.
Thanks for it.
Okay, folks, take your seats, please, because we're buffering on the live stream now. Thank you.
The applicants for R2 are online.
Okay. Buffering. Live? Okay, we're live. Welcome back, everybody. Mr. Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're moving to R2, the report from the Development Services Division with regards to application DVP 22102. That's 9634 Creekside Drive.
We have staff. Let's go.
Thank you. And I believe there's a PowerPoint slide to accompany this. Thank you. This is an application for a development variance permit for the property located at 9634 Creekside Drive. Next slide, please. This shows the general vicinity of the property. The application proposes to increase the maximum height of a single-family dwelling from 10 meters to 10.3 meters. Next slide, please. And I seem to got a bit ahead of myself. One more slide. Thank you. The applicant proposes to decommission an existing dwelling and build an addition onto the rear of the structure that will result in a 3-bedroom home. Due to the topography of the proposed addition will be over height. However, the owner submits that if they changed the building plans and detached the new 3-bedroom addition from the existing dwelling and convert the existing dwelling into an outbuilding, the height regulations will be achieved. The property owner has applied for a development variance permit, which may be issued, a development permit, which may be issued pending the outcome of this development variance permit application. If this variance is denied, the owner will need to amend their development proposal to comply with the 10-meter height limit. Next slide, please. The recommendation to the board, to the ESC to the board, is that application DVP 22I02 be approved. And I'm here for questions, and the applicants should be in the room as well, I believe digitally.
Thank you, Mr. Buchan. And I understand the applicants are in the waiting room. Does the applicant have anything to add?
Mr. Chair, I believe they're online. Anderson's there. If the chair was indicating whether it wished to make any comments with regards to your application.
Okay, I can see some shaking heads there. Okay, thank you, Mr. Buchan. And I turn to the director of the area. Director, oh, he's not here today, is he? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Director Deck.
I move this recommendation, option 1.
And moved and seconded. Any discussion? Director Morrison.
Yeah, just, I don't know why I seem to ask questions about stuff that's not in here, but I looked at the pictures, and one of the things that community often considers, and I don't see a great deal of input on this, but is the relative elevation in relation to neighbors. And it, you know, I guess community considers a relatively stable roof line amongst several properties is to be a little more pleasing look than to have ones. So this isn't a large variation in our large change, but do we know if there's a fairly consistent roof elevations along that stretch of properties?
I can't say if there's a consistent roof elevation. What I can say is that we haven't had concerns from the public, and a decision to deny the variance may still result in the 2 roof lines, as it would potentially just be a removal of that breezeway that connects the new dwelling from the existing dwelling, and the owner would be decommissioning that existing dwelling into an accessory building.
Thanks, Mr. Buchan. Okay, so any more discussion on that? Director Deck has moved option 1, which is that it be recommended to the board that application DVP 22102 9364 Creekside Drive, PID 026253 for a development variance permit be approved. Call the question. All those in favour? Any opposed? None opposed? That's approved. Thank you, Mr. Buchan. Mr. Robbins.
Moving to R3, the report from the Development Services Division with regard to application number SA20I04.
Oh, Mr. Buchan again.
Yep, same.
You didn't move. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Parcel frontage exemption request has been made to facilitate a proposed 10-lot subdivision at Yuba Road, PID 000222348. Next slide, please. The property owners are proposing to subdivide the land into 10 residential recreational lots and 1 park parcel. This property has been subject to a rezoning that was approved some time ago and has been in the process of subdivision for some time. Next slide, please. Due to the configuration of the proposed subdivision, the proposed lots do not meet the 10% parcel frontage requirement as dictated by the Local Government Act. The board can waive this 10% rule. Table 1 of the staff report identifies the various frontages that are being proposed, which range from 4.3% to 9.9%. Should the 10% parcel frontage requirement be waived, the applicant still has other works to work on before subdivision can be achieved, such as working on a development permit, providing 5% of the land as park or cash in lieu, and that is in excess to the park shown on the screen, as well as a contribution of $75,000 in a covenant. Next slide, please. The recommendation is that the proposed frontage exemption request be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Buchan.
And also the applicant's agent should be in the room digitally as well.
Okay, does the applicant's agent wish to add anything? Okay, Director Deck, that's your area again, I think. No, I got it wrong again. Oh, he's online.
Oh, is he?
Where is he?
Is he speaking or?
I'm not
Or
seeing
he just
anything.
said he was there? Okay.
I'm not seeing anything. Okay. Mr. Dias, do you have anything to say? Nope. Okay. Yeah, let's move ahead. Director Deck.
When do I ask my questions?
Go ahead right now.
Okay. So this map that that is here, is that the way the subdivision will look like at the, is that what the subdivision is supposed to look like?
I think we
Or
can,
is it, I see the map is from 2019.
yes, so this map will need to be updated to reflect the subdivision as proposed. The key thing that would be changing here is that the road dedication, which is highlighted in green on the screen and also in the report, will become park. We have a covenant on the lands that was secured at time of rezoning that negotiated a $75,000 amenity contribution, as well as that land as park if it wasn't required by the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. The other side of the road, there is a 10-meter road dedication, and that combines with roads on the other side of the lands as well. That would remain as Modi Road. The remainder of the lots are shown as linking across the road, so we can see Part one is linked, and each of those lots is linked to the lands behind it. This would more or less be the subdivision as proposed.
So there's a new survey being done then, is there?
Yes, that would be a requirement for subdivision, is to update the survey to reflect that as park. There's also a development permit requirement and several other items that the applicant is working through.
Okay, okay. I'll move this option 1.
Okay, Director Nicholson first, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to know, so down at the other end, there's another road dedication, so that will stay as a road.
As we understand it, yes.
So one will be a road and one will be green space?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And the question from me, Mr. Buchan, and if I'm reading this correctly, then they'll get a park and an additional amenity contribution of $75,000?
Yes, those items were secured at time of rezoning, and those are in addition to the 5%, which is either land or cash in lieu that's provided at time of subdivision.
Okay.
I understand that the owner is working with our parks departments to have an appraisal done to determine what that 5% is, which is in addition to that park and the 75,000.
Good, thank you. Director Deck, would you like to move any?
It's been moved and seconded.
I'm sorry, been moved and seconded. So, any more discussion? All those in favour? Anyone opposed? None opposed? That's approved. Thank you, Mr. Buchan.
Moving to R4, which is a report from the Inspection Enforcement Division with regards to Building Inspection 2023 second quarter report. It's for your information. Our
This
Chief
one's for
Building Inspector is here, though.
Yep, for information, if anybody has any questions for Mr. McDonald. Oh, it's not Mr. McDonald. I
Or
gotta
Mr.
start
Brisky.
scanning around. Sorry, Mr. Brisky. Any questions or comments from Mr. Brisky? None? Yes, there you go, Director Acton.
I'm trying to find my question. Don't go to the next item. First of all, I wanted to say this was a really good report. I don't remember getting them exactly like this. You gave us a lot of good information. And, well, I noticed Area D had a lot of inspections. Like, what's happening over there? I guess it's because they have water and sewer. Is that, well, that's not my question, but you can answer
I
it.
can answer that if you'd
Okay.
like. Okay, through the chair to you, Director Acton. Phase 3 of Cowichan Estates is a large portion of our work right now, in addition to Parhar's Business Park on Chester Road. So we're seeing a lot of work there right now in that respect.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, I know. I noticed that you mentioned the draft building bylaw coming in the fall.
Yes, we have, yeah, Mr.
So
McDonald's waving it around.
Can you kind
over
of
there.
explain what that means to us a little bit?
Okay, so through the chair to you, Director Acton and directors, basically Mr. McDonald and I have been working on a number of amendments to the current building bylaw, and we determined that what would be best, considering the number of amendments we're considering, that we were going to present to you a new bylaw. In the report, you'll see that we've been gifted a template from the Municipal Insurance Association of British Columbia. Through our research, we've actually discovered that a number of districts and municipalities throughout the province have adopted a similar template. It was quite a simple process. We just input some local, community priorities and things like that that work for us. But what I can say is, certainly in the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've been presented with a number of challenges to the existing bylaw that have, made some enforcement matters difficult. So this bylaw that's going to come to you is going to really, enhance the clarification and specificity of a lot of matters, and really make things a lot simpler for us to manage, which we hope is certainly, what the committee's looking for. So.
Done. Thank you. Director Morrison.
Thank you, and good report, and I love graphs and bars and stuff, bar graphs and stuff, so.
Bars.
So I'm sort of going 30,000 foot level here and noting that, except for, I'm looking at the chart, total new housing starts and the graph from 2019 to 2023, and 2019, 2020, early COVID, a lot of people were cocooning in their homes and not building new houses. I get that, but I'm just looking at the pace of 58 new housing starts in the regional district in 2023. That's a 6-month number. That's 50%, and I just having some concern, and I may ask you to do a little crystal ball gazing here, in that we're supposed to be trying to increase housing supply, and 58 halfway through a year is going to be, almost the same kind of number as 2019. So I'm asking if you have seen any indications of, a surge perhaps in the summer and fall, because at this point, I heard on the news this morning, one of the major federal party leaders is looking at penalizing local governments with withholding infrastructure investments if we're not increasing our housing supply by 15% each year. So is there hope on the horizon for 2023 for new housing starts? Have you seen any indication, or are we just gonna have to wait to see if they come in across the front counter?
That's a good question, Director Morrison. I anticipated a little bit of crystal ball work this afternoon, but through the chair to you, I mean, what I can say is, I think there are a lot of other issues that, may contribute to perhaps a slowdown in construction. What we experienced through the COVID pandemic was certainly not, I think, what any of us had anticipated. And certainly, although the cost of materials rose, the cost of the money to purchase those materials was favorable. What I will say is maybe at the beginning of the third quarter here in the last couple of weeks, we probably have seen things start to tail off a little bit. People who have their permits are making good progress through the summer, but I would have to say that I would anticipate things to slow down a little bit. And, from the building department's perspective, I mean, we can only issue building permits on parcels that are prepared to be built on. And certainly if they're not of that capacity, then there's really nothing more than we can do about it, so.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brisky. Director Nicholson.
I'm not really sure how to put this, but when I read this, I was thinking, boy, we spend a lot of time. We have a lot of inspectors, do we? How many inspectors do we have?
We have myself, 4 field inspectors, and a plan checker.
Right. So we put a lot of resources into this inspection part, and I'm wondering what we're required to do versus what is nice to do, and how do we balance that with the other side of the division, which is enforcement? So, because I sort of have this sense all of a sudden, I was thinking about it, that without questioning it, we put a lot of focus and emphasis on building inspection. And I was wondering if that's a actual legislative requirement, or whether we need to think about how we balance that, our resourcing with the enforcement side. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll do my best attempt to answer that question.
Good luck.
A lot of it, for what we have, and I don't know if we're even looking at a balance, we're looking at customer service. So we look at our numbers based on how soon, by the time we receive an application, do we want to get that out to the public. So in the past, we've had different times when it's taken quite a while for us to get permits out. We've also had a high demand years ago from a previous GM that was looking to try and get us to do a 2-day turnaround. So it's all about balance. So we could certainly shift out of fewer inspectors, but what we're going to end up with is a lot longer waits for getting building permits. So
Right.
I think the balance we have right now is a very good balance, and I'm not sure the connection between bylaw enforcement, because bylaw enforcement is a bit of a different animal. There's some crossover, but not very much. The inspectors themselves do a very good job of actually policing the building bylaw, and it's very seldom that we actually have a bylaw officer have to attend and give backup or seek legal action.
Follow up?
And so how much is it then, I mean, I'm assuming there's some cost recovery on the building inspection side of it. So how much do we recover our costs on building inspection?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can say that new building bylaw, it does have an increase in fees. So we're looking at approximately 15% over the board. So we are looking to always try to cost recover through fees. But we also want to stay consistent with other municipalities and regional districts. So we monitor those as well to make sure we're not too less or too much.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. A question for me would be, I assume during the building inspections as well, you're looking at making sure that the codes are adhered to, safety aspects, electrical and that kind of stuff?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. Pardon the metaphor, but I think most building codes were written in blood.
Yeah.
So certainly, and the building code certainly isn't getting any thinner. So we do have a regulatory authority to, see that these regulations are adhered to and that the public is safe. So
Good, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Brisky. So I'm going to, Director Clinton.
Don't ignore me, Chair.
I know.
Thank you. Mr. Brisky, the name that makes everybody thirsty. I'm just curious if you can help me parse out, I read through this, but I didn't see any mention of it specifically. So like the building permits, how it relates to maybe carriage homes, secondary units, which, you know, also increases our stock. Does this incorporate that, or just help me understand that a little bit better? Yeah.
Absolutely, Director McClinton, and thank you. I'll pay for that. But that actually might lend to partially of what maybe Director Morrison was referring to. The 58 new dwelling units do include secondary suites and accessory dwelling units, which we're seeing more of. The province reduced a lot of the requirements for putting secondary suites into existing houses. So indeed, yes, that is reflective of that.
Good question. Yeah, it was, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to, do we have a motion on the floor?
None needed.
Okay, none needed. Thank you very much, Mr. Brisky. Sorry? Okay, go ahead.
So the capacity workload and the likes was brought up, and I'm just curious because you're busy doing a lot of work and keeping our community safe and inspections, and I get all of that, but I'm going to go back to sort of the supply question, in that you made some very interesting comments, and I think pertinent ones around we could only have new housing starts more or less on lots that are prepared to accept them and that are ready and zoned and in that spot. And so my concern is that there are a number of factors that are working against us bringing more supply on board in our regional district, whether it be interest rates or, you know, looming more regulation or maybe even less from the province. Is your department in a position, should we have a surge? Are you in a position to, because we don't want to have people want to come in the door, get their building permits, and due to a surge, take longer and longer to have them processed. So do you feel comfortable that yes, we can weather a downturn, but it's our job to try and, or we're being mandated now to bring more housing stock on board. Are your folks ready for that?
Thank you, Director Morrison, through the chair to you. I think we are well equipped if we were to experience a surge. You know, if you will, I think we may have already been through one just recently. Like, you know, we had a period there a couple of years ago where we were forced out of this building, and that was at a time when our department was actually 2 members less than it is right now. And that was when we, you know, experienced the big uptick in the COVID-19, and we weathered it, for sure we did. But as Mr. McDonald said, you know, we have priorities, customer service, things like that, but certainly there's no shortage of work to do in our division. It's just as far as, you know, what is the priority, and if it is to issue building permits and get people going, then that's what it'll be. If there aren't building permits to be issued, we have plenty of other work that will take our time and resources.
Thank you, Mr. Brisky. I think that's it for the time being. Any more questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you all very much.
Mr. Robbins.
Moves us to R4, the report from the Parks and Trails Division with regards to the Lashburn Road entrance structure proposed by Brentwood College, Electoral Area A, Mill Bay, Malahat. And I understand that representative from Brentwood College is here with us this afternoon as well.
Mr. Shadlock. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report before you is to obtain board endorsement of the entrance structure proposed by Brentwood College over the southern end of Lashburn Road in Mill Bay. This road was recently purchased from the MOTI by Brentwood College, and as part of the purchase, an SRW, or statutory right-of-way, was registered over the paved portion of the road in favor of the CVRD for public pedestrian cyclist use. The SRW included the installation of an entrance structure with consideration and comments from the CVRD board to ensure there is no impediment to public pedestrian use. So the attachments to this report show the design drawings of the gate proposed by Brentwood College, inclusive of the multi-use public pathway access on the west side of the gate. This access meets the requirements of the SRW for no impediments to public pedestrian or cyclist access. So the one change that does need to occur is that the SRW needs to be amended to show the multi-use public entrance pathway as paved. So in addition to the SRW amendment, the CBRD will apply to the Ministry of Transportation for a license of occupation on the north end of Lashburn Road for a new multi-use pathway connection up to the highway. And that would meet up with the bridge. And this will be paid for by Brentwood College. So there are 4 recommendations before you. And I'll leave it at that. And Tom is here, Tom Shattuck, to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Roca. Anything to add, Mr. Sherlock? No? I have a question, actually, if, and it may be possibly for yourself. That the end of that road is used by the salmon restoration people every year. Is there going to be any restrictions on their access or their activities down there?
No, they actually, we have an agreement.
Could you move up to the mic? That's it.
Sorry. Yes, they have an agreement in place to make sure that they can come down there. They actually were one of the prime supporters of the privatization there because of the damage that they've had. So
Good.
We work closely with them.
Yeah, good. Thanks very much for that. Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. Like the main gates, Mr. Shadlock, will they be open during the day or, and then closed at the appropriate time?
Yeah, it's when students are there, we normally do it after they're done parent pickup, 10:30, 11 or whatever. And when the students are away, we close them slightly earlier.
And you've provided a nice swale so that people can get around to the bridge and after hours?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Any more questions for staff or Mr. Shadlock? This is a long recommendation here, so I'm going to turn to the director of the area either to read it or move it.
Yeah, I'll just move all 4.
Seconded by Director Morrison. Any further discussion?
Can
Go
I
ahead,
speak to it?
Director.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Brentwood College and for the partnership with the CVRD on this. The trail is an important part of our active transportation plan, helping our community connect from the, all the businesses that are there. And so I just really want to acknowledge your commitment to our community and to make improvements here that make increase accessibility, safety for the children and residents, cyclists, pedestrians that use Lashburn Road a lot. Thank you.
Good.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Moved and seconded, or call the question. All those in favour? Any opposed? None opposed? That passes. Thank you, Mr. Shadlock. Thank you, Mr. Roca.
Mr. Chair, we're moving to R6, the report from the General Manager, Land Use Services Department with regards to minimum parcel frontage exemptions. This is for your information.
Ms. Gerald.
And there is your GM.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Directors. So the report is for information following the board's request for information about delegation of the authority around exemptions for parcel frontage. And so I think my staff report's fairly self-explanatory in that you as a board have the ability to regulate the shape, dimensions, and area of parcels that are going to be created by subdivision. And the limitation to that is that the local government requires the frontage onto a highway or roadway to be the minimum of 10% of the perimeter of the lot, or the of the lot, or the greater of 10%, or the minimum that the government can provide by bylaw. And I believe most of our bylaws now will default to the 10%. So the ability for the board is to, if you wish, you can delegate that authority to the provincial approving officer. It can't be delegated to staff, only to the approving officer. Or you retain that authority and you continue to receive the applications that are coming forward for the requests. And as I noted in the report as well, there's no sort of requirement under the Local Government Act to consider certain criteria, but there is a guide to rural subdivision approvals, which was actually referenced in Mr. Buchan's report, which you considered earlier. And it talks about the things that should be considered when you're looking at a decision as to whether or not to waive parcel frontage. And those things include, would there be adequate access to the parcel? Is the terrain suitable? So are there, are there steep slopes or other conditions that would impact the frontage? Is there going to be an adequate building envelope? And would you be sort of limiting the ability for subdivision if you were to grant that that waivers, because the intent is that you want to be able to yield as many lots as possible. So the reports of information, I did provide a couple options there in case you did want to pursue further delegation of authority, but I'm here for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Jarroff. Any questions for Ms. Jarroff? Nope. Director Nicholson? Oh, and Director Act.
I just wanted to say thank you very much for the report. This has clarified this issue for me really well, and Mr. Buchan's report, that was good to have them on the same agenda. And I really feel strongly that we should retain it here, not delegate it to the subdivision approval person.
Thank you, Director Nicholson. Director Acton.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm a little bit undecided now because of this report. I think I was in favor of it, and then today having that other application come in too. But also, if you recall, I sent you an email about a month ago wondering if when Parks comes forward and has like a right-of-way renewal or the cell tower, that kind of thing, if that should be delegated. And you said, yeah, good idea. But when you replied to me and you said something's coming forward, I thought it was going to be more than just this one. Is there more coming forward?
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Director Acton. So I do make a reference in the report, and thank you for jogging my memory, because we did have that that interaction via email. So we do have two bylaws that delegate authority. One is the Development Application Procedures Bylaw, and the delegation in that bylaw is around development permits and now minor development variance permits. But we also have CBRD bylaw number 4361, which is the Regional District Delegation Bylaw. And that is a bylaw that looks at a whole range of other things, so procurement, signing authority, and legal proceedings. And I think that if you were to look at delegating authority around renewals of licenses and permits and that sort of thing, that would be the appropriate place to look at delegation of authority. And if you want more information on that specific to either parks or other services that the regional district provides, that direction back to staff to report back on specific items within, for that bylaw that could be considered by the board for delegation.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about the second one you mentioned, but what about the first one? So that this would fit into that first bylaw.
So,
yeah, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So there was, when we looked at, originally, when we looked at a delegation of authority, there was discussion internally about whether or not that should actually be in the corporate delegation bylaw, or whether it should be in a separate bylaw along with all of the regulations around development applications. And it was the decision of the corporate officer at the time, not Mr. Robbins, that the development application procedures bylaw should include delegation around, specifically around development applications.
Mm-hmm.
So other matters, so delegation within development procedures bylaw is specific to development applications. And so the other matters would be dealt with under the other, under bylaw. There are other local governments that do delegate authority for things like renewal of licenses for park use and so forth.
So, last question. I do recall quite a few delegations of authority in the previous board, and I'm wondering if we could review, like this makes me think, oh, maybe we should review some of those or all of them together, like instead of just looking at this one. So that's just maybe, I don't know if that's a question, or a comment. Maybe it would be easier for us to understand and to actually review some of them, because I do recall some of them making certain directors or myself go, maybe should we have done that? Like, because I felt like in the past, when we looked at these types of delegations, it was alone and seems innocuous, but then after the fact, you think about it some more and maybe not a great idea. So I'm wondering if it's something we could at least review.
I think that might, can I help you out here a little bit, maybe? Because that probably included here in the report, which is options, where it says, this staff report has been provided for information. Should the board wish to consider further delegate authority, blah, blah, blah. Number 2 in there is that staff be directed to report back to the committee on delegation of authority in relation to brackets specify. That would cover what Director Acton is calling for here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I believe so. There have been reports that have come to committee within the last year. We just recently brought reports forward which amended or actually replaced the development application procedures bylaw. So there was information in that report about delegation of authority, but obviously specific to development services, not to the CVRD more broadly. I think if you were to if you wanted to look at the delegation of authority more broadly, that would be a matter that should probably be discussed at the committee of the whole, and so
No, I was just
you
thinking
could refer to
development services wise, or the approving officer for development.
the delegation of authority
yes.
under development application procedures bylaw.
Okay. Any more discussion? This one was for information. Director Morrison?
Yeah, this is kind of a fascinating topic because the more we delegate to staff, the less work we have to do. But for the benefit of people new to sitting around this table, the hours that had been spent on development permits and discussion around items, and remembering that these are permits, they're not sort of statutory decisions about asking for, they're statutory decisions, but the door isn't open to asking for a whole bunch of other stuff, but we seem to spend an awful lot of time asking for a whole bunch of other things that we weren't permitted to under the permit system. So I congratulate Ms. Charolf and making the transition and taking on those responsibilities, because it's been pretty smooth sailing from what we can tell, and so that's good. But I'm really reluctant and glad that you pointed out that the only place we can delegate this sort of authority is to the provincial approving officer, and I don't care if they're watching our live stream. They don't impress me a whole bunch. So I think keeping this around this table is a really smart thing. But I think Director Acton brings up a good point. I think that maybe not annually, but maybe at some point into the beginning of a term, there should be a report and a review, and not necessarily as part of the new director training, because new directors are getting it through a fire hose at the beginning, but a review of the various authorities that have been delegated to staff, so that we've got a clear understanding, these are your bailiwick, these have been delegated to staff, they're all part of a continuum, they're really important, just so that everyone has a clear understanding. And I don't know if you need a resolution for that, but I think that makes a whole bunch of sense. Thanks.
That's a good idea, isn't it? What do you think, Ms. Charolf? Yeah, I think so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I could recommend, so for one, just one point is that the development application procedures bylaw does clearly set out what has been delegated. So it should be really clear within that bylaw. But staff can report back on how that authority has been exercised. So for instance, the number of permits that have been issued by the delegates, and and relative to each electoral area and the types of permits and so forth. So that is something that we should be providing to you as a matter of course, because it is important when you have delegated your authority to understand on a sort of a routine basis how that's being used, because it's important, right? It's actually your authority that you're asking, you're trusting to another individual.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you absolutely should get a report on that.
I think the key phrase there was on a routine basis there, which would come in useful. Mr. Robbins, I don't think we need a resolution on that, do we? But staff understand that.
Take it under advisement.
If we could, please, yeah. Great, thank you very much. Mr. Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. R7 is a report from the Finance Division with regards to the Gas Tax 2021 Community Works Fund allocation formula. There is a recommendation from staff.
Ms. Bowen's striding up to the podium there. Before you get there, can I ask for some more, please? Yeah, I know. Ms. Bowen.
I don't really have a report or a presentation or anything.
No,
This
I
is
figured
everything
there might be just a few questions. If anybody wants to ask any questions, I don't have any. I think this has been well reported. I think it's great. But does anyone have any questions? Director Morrison and Director Acton.
So I don't like the formula, but we've all decided that's the formula. But I guess I would pose the question. So, essentially this is some bonus money and the likes, and we've got the breakdown 60-30-10. And sure, it's real easy to follow the formula. As, a low population and area, we don't get a whole bunch of money on this. I'm just wondering if we've already in previous allocations put dollars in, like the 30% and the 10% in the asset management capacity building and the future infrastructure investments. So we've already allocated a set amount. Is there really a requirement to follow the formula, or couldn't the formula just be rejigged for the purposes of this to 100% to allocation to electoral areas?
Coup. Please.
Through the chair to Director Morrison, with regards to like how we split it out, if we had accounted for it back in 2019 when the report came out, it would have been split that way. There are projects that are on the denied list that we're working with SMT that fall into those other two categories that do need funding, that are for capacity building and that. So yeah, there are projects that are looking for money as well, as not just in electoral areas.
Follow up?
Well, that's kind of my point, is I'm sure that this committee would like to review that list, and as opposed to SMT coming to us and saying, this is what we need, we'd like to maybe have a crack at what's the amount? 1.628092.00 amount, and have the merits of those projects in the capacity building and asset management infrastructure investments, convince us that they're appropriate. So it's just a different way of looking at it. Maybe we should have the first crack at that amount, and staff come, to us with a good cause for allocating the, what's it, $640,000. So it's just a different way of thinking. I'm putting it on the table for my colleagues to consider.
Okay. Do you have any? You do.
Through the chair to Director Morrison. So we're still in, I really wish that I had Barb here, with the asset management and the whole program that we're getting there to bring all of our assets under one. So we're still working on that, and that's where some of this money is going to, is to get our assets up to date and ensure that we're keeping track of them so that we know of the electoral areas where all the assets are, and that we are in one location and not having all these little pockets of information all over the CVRD. We have one location
one way to keep it track of it, one way to ensure that we are and fixing it before we find out that it breaks and then having to do emergencies. We kind of want to be proactive and fix things ahead of time with routine maintenance.
Thanks, Tracy. Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I just need clarity to what types of projects you're talking, or the funding mechanism. You know, we're all strapped for funds to do projects in each area. And clearly the municipalities are getting a huge amount for their population. So I like the idea that Director Morrison brought up. That way we're ensuring that this small, piddly 15% is going to the electoral area community. So are you talking about anything that would be funded regionally otherwise?
Through the chair to Director Acton, you're getting the two reports mixed up. This is Community Works Fund money. The money you're referring to is the growing communities. So that's that's the second report. This is, yeah. Yeah, this is only electoral areas. Yeah, and same with the other one is only electoral areas.
Director Morrison.
So maybe I could help you out here a little bit. It sounds to me like our asset management program for the electoral areas, the work list, the projects was overprescribed for the amount of dollars that we had to do the capacity building and the likes. And so is it fair to say that you're suggesting the $650,000 that's that amounts to the 40% is going to continue to do that work because we maybe bit off more than we can chew and this bonus money is helpful?
Through the chair to Director Morrison, this bonus money is helpful for everybody. So like it's, you guys are each getting a little pocket of money for more projects that we thought we weren't going to be able to do. And it's not just strictly for the asset. There was stuff on the capacity building that were for multiple electoral areas to help across the way. So it's not just one. It's not just one area. So.
Director McKenzie.
Through the chair, thank you. I think my colleague's suggesting he doesn't want to delegate authority on this particular. It's my first time where we've had money and I haven't had to say we had to cut. So I'm just curious if you can help me understand in a practical term, like how does the rubber hit the road with this money moving forward?
Through the chair to Director McClinton. So for each of the amounts that we give to each of the electoral areas, in the next month or so, I would be making appointments with each of you to go over the projects and we also invite Parks and Engineering to be part of those. And they bring projects forward, discuss it with you on a one-on-one on where you would like to see your money be dedicated to. And then if you have money left over, we every year we meet with everybody just to make sure. And that's where that money is spent. Does that make?
That's perfect. You've just become very popular.
Director Nicholson.
Well, so just to follow up with Director Morrison's train of thought, have we had, I don't believe we've had an update on where our asset management is at, and like what would you have done if we hadn't got this bonus on the asset management side of things?
Through the chair to Director Nicholson, I'm not sure where that all is. I'm not involved in that project at this time. Because asset management is its own little division within the corporate services department. So I'm not sure where that all sits at this present moment. And they would have probably had to, find where they would have to take it from something else or do financing a different way. But the project, we would be bringing projects to you guys, like the same as what we did the first time around. There's projects that were brought forward by the departments, brought to the board to see which ones would be on the approved list, which ones would be on the denied list. So there would be ones that would come in.
Okay.
Okay, I think any more questions for Ms. Bowen because she's next up again by the sounds of things. No, and the recommendation there, Mr. Robbins.
That we recommended to the board that the 2021 extra top-up gas tax Community Works Fund to be allocated as per the formula detailed in Table 2 of the July 19, 2023 staff report and be allocated in the 2024 budget process.
There was a mover and seconder for that? Mover and seconder, good. Yes, indeed, discussion. So, hang on a second.
Yeah, just speaking to it, I do agree with my colleague that it'd be helpful to understand what some of those projects are. I have a lot of trust in our staff, and I think likely I'll be going along with their suggestions, but I think it would be helpful to know. So maybe I'll turn to my colleague down the way.
Director Morrison.
So I'm a little curious, do we have a time pressure timeline on this resolution being included in the 2024 budget process? And I'm going to give you a completely selfish reason why. I've reallocated some dollars that are available in the electoral area pot in my area to an infrastructure upgrade that was absolutely needed because they were spending thousands and thousands of dollars going and fixing old pipe. And so, I kind of want to look at the infrastructure management program. I kind of want to look at what the list that the SMT has put together. And I'd be perfectly fine with moving this resolution forward if we had that data and that information brought before us, before the 2024 budget process was really going forward in earnest. So as long as we can get a commitment from staff to make that available to us in the, obviously not in August, but before we get really deep into the budget process, I'd be happy to support this.
Interesting. Ms. Bowen.
Through the chair to Director Morrison, departments have already started their budgets for 2024. We're already in the process. And this has to be allocated by the end of December of this year. So it has to be allocated in the 2023, in this year for the 2024 budget to be used up as part of the gas tax. So under that funding agreement. So we could bring something back in September. I'd have to meet with SMT and talk to them about it, and it would be September. And we would be pushing because departments have to have their budgets to me by the 22nd of September.
Director McClinton, did I see you waving at me? I didn't. Okay. So, there we go. Director Deck. No, Director Nicholson.
Are we doing R8?
No, we're on R7.
We're still on R7?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. So let's call the question. All those in favour? Any opposed? None opposed? That passes. Mr. Robbins.
Moving to R8, report from the Finance Division with regards to the growing community funds. And there is a staff recommendation on allocating that particular fund.
Ms. Bowen, welcome back again.
Again, I don't have a presentation on this one either.
Okay, so questions. Director Nicholson.
Yeah, I was just looking at the eligibility criteria, and it strikes me that it touches on a lot of what we thought were important priorities in our strategic planning. And so I would like to, I think it would be helpful to, this is a one-time opportunity to maybe move some things forward that outside of the regular operating process. And so I think it would be useful to have a conversation from that perspective before the budget process with the strategic plan in hand and talk about what the opportunities are to maybe advance some of the strategic priorities with this Growing Communities Fund, as opposed to just using it to do regular infrastructure kinds of things.
Through the chair to Director Nicholson, the criteria is very limited is on what they can, what we can use it for. And they're really pushing from the province is really pushing for municipalities and regional districts to look at it as a whole, all the electoral areas getting a benefit of one, not splitting it out like we did with the Community Works Fund.
Yeah, I agree completely, but I actually think we've got affordable housing in here. We've got parks and recreation, transportation, water and waste. And so you can even, it looks like you could even do natural asset purchasing and so forth, natural hazard mitigation. So there is quite a lot in here that you could do, and a lot of it really lines up well with, I think, our strategic priorities. So I think it would be nice to think about what we talked about in our strategic planning, putting this in that context as opposed to just allowing it to disappear off into our regular operating things. Because if you have a strategic plan and you actually want to make a shift, we don't have much latitude to do that in our regular budgeting process. You know we don't. So this to me is the opportunity to strategically make a shift if we think about how to do that. And we need to do that separate from the regular budgeting, I think. It'd be nice to do it in advance. That's my point.
Ms. Bowen?
Through the chair to Director Nicholson, the one thing we do have to be cognizant of, now that the rec centers are under regional rec, they don't qualify for this now because they're regional. They're not electoral area. So that's one thing. And the other is we have to have this money allocated by December 31st of this year for the 2024 budget. So it has to be in this year's budget. We can't. So we need to have the process in like every other budget in September. So people are already looking at it.
Director Acton.
Yeah, I think that Director Nicholson brings up a good point on, and now it's really clear to me that it's only electoral areas. And if we have in our strategic plan that, I'm thinking of the old one, but so I can't visualize the new one, but where we had the electoral area ones really defined. So if we did focus on the electoral area items that are in our strategic plan, that makes sense. And that is a good point, that it's always hard for us to fund those things, because to get out of that, the regular momentum, and to fund anyway, I'm repeating myself now. So anyway, good idea. Thank you so much.
Director Morrison was next.
I think this must have been getting long into the evening when I was reading this report. And but one thing that is just popped back into my head was we've got a sample calculation in one of the attachments that have we actually done a calculation, or did I just miss it, of what the dollar amount will be to the 9 electoral areas?
Yeah, I think that's on page 1 of the report there, is it not? Background.
So through the chair to Director Morrison, I have not done the actual calculation, but I've taken what they have sent us, because there's one little section that has quite a bit of tweaking that you have to do to it to figure it out.
Yeah, that's on page something of whatever, where it says flat funding, total population, rural population growth. Yeah, so it would be nice to have that number. And is this the extent of, like, so for context, when we've had the gas tax funds in previous years, previous terms, there have been purposeful allocations. I remember the first time we were actually contemplating this, the resolution came to the board, 100% distribution by population in electoral areas. And I thought that was lacking forethought and foresight, because clearly there's items that we as electoral areas, whether it be A, B, and C or neighboring electoral areas, can get together and do some, and we have done some good projects in the past. So there was I think it was 20% we might have taken off the top and said, we'll put that in a regional pot, and we worked with that. Is this, because they're not allocating it to individual electoral areas, and I see the benefit that Director Nicholson has brought up, what other funding pots are we expecting to come down the pipe that might give us some of that flexibility?
Through the chair to Director Morrison, I'm sorry, I have not seen any other ones that are coming through. With just the shortness in staff, we're just focused on what's happening in the department right at the moment. Yeah, and they have been very specific that we do not break this down any further to the electoral areas and split it out again by population. They've been very adamant. I've asked a couple of different times, and they've been very adamant it must stay as one lump sum and be used for the electoral areas as a region, even if it's something that's in B that benefits everybody, it would be in area B.
I get that part, and over the years, these have been very important and strategic funds that have been put to use in a lot of the different electoral areas at the discretion of, well, the board, but still, I'm a little disappointed in the rigidity of this program. Thanks.
Director McClinton.
Through the chair, thank you. Yeah, again, to my question in the previous, just, you know, for me anyways, water seems to be something that we talk about on a regular basis, but I guess just, again, how do you guys come back with suggestions about the types of projects we're going to work on? How does we start to spend this money?
Through the chair to Director McClinton, first it usually starts with discussion at SMT and then kind of filters down to departments to get feedback from different departments on projects or areas that they may see that they need funding or things that are coming through the pipe they would know more, and then we bring it back and bring a report of proposed projects and talk to the board about what they think.
Just to follow up, I just think it's really exciting. We get to do something big, a legacy project kind of mentality. So yeah, just really looking forward to what you guys bring forward. Thank you.
Okay, any more? I don't see any more. Is there a recommendation here, Mr. Robbins? And there is, and seconded. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favour? Any opposed? Okay, Director Nicholson.
I actually would like to see us have some sort of a workshop before we get into the budget process. I think at this point, it's really important that we don't just leave it to staff to come up with projects that they think meet our needs. I think we really need to think clearly about what we want to do in the next 3 years that will make a difference to what we've talked about as being the most important strategic priorities for the region and electoral areas in particular. So I don't want this just to be the regular process. So I will be voting against this. And I would like to amend this motion to have a workshop prior to the budget process to have a further discussion about how we might take this fund and use it. That would be my preference. I'm not sure how to make that happen at this point.
Director Morrison.
Well, I think it'd be completely appropriate to pass the resolution and do a supplemental resolution requesting the workshop that Director Nicholson
That's the way I'm thinking as well here. Yeah, would that be okay? Okay, let's, we just voted on the resolution.
No.
No, okay, let's vote on the resolution then first of all, on that, and then we can come back. Is that correct? Nope, still haven't got it right. Mr. Robbins, help me out here.
Yeah, there's a motion before you on the floor.
Yeah.
And unless there are amendments or any other motions that supersede the motion on the floor, then the action is to vote on it.
Okay. So we'll call the question on that one, to vote on that one. All those in favour?
Maybe I should amend this one. Maybe I should try to amend this one.
I think what Mr. Robbins is saying, we'll vote on this one, then come forward with the amendment that you're talking about. Is that correct?
Unless.
Just to help here a little bit, there's timeline here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think to pass the resolution to allow staff to begin work and then ask them to create a workshop.
Yeah.
Early September.
Hang on a second. Let me just, Ms. Bowen.
Okay. Through the chair to Director Nicholson, if a workshop is wanted and we would be September because of the break, then we would have to amend the budget calendar and push all the dates for the amended calendar, and instead of being a February date, we'd be looking into a March date. for an adoption. So we would have to change all the dates for the budget calendar to accommodate this.
Director Acton.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to vote in favor of the original motion, and I think that staff has heard that it's a good idea to look at some of our priorities that are on our strategic plan, and I don't need another workshop. I think we have quite a few already lined up, and I think that we should not jimmy with the budget schedule and finance is stressed out enough, and we can, I think we're heard. We're going to see lists of priorities and suggestions. So,
Director Morrison.
No, I'm going to say call the question and follow the resolution.
Okay. So we're going to vote on the resolution which is on the floor right now. Would you like to read it? Does anyone need clarification on what we're voting on here?
That it
Yes,
be recommended
no?
to the board that the strategy for allocating the growing community funds to be established, to be the established 2024 budget process.
Okay, call the question. All those in favour? Any opposed? One opposed. Director Nicholson is opposed. Okay, so Director Morrison.
So maybe this will work, that staff be asked to provide a report at an Electoral Area Services Committee meeting in early September, connecting the fund that we just approved the process of and electoral area strategic priorities.
Okay, that and seconding and seconded. Did you get a note of that, Mr. Robbins or Jennifer? Yes? So there it is on the floor there. We have a motion and we've had it seconded. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favour? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you, Director Morrison.
Moving through your agenda, we go to item 11, question period. And the question period is an opportunity to offer the public to ask a question regarding the business of the CVRD. The question period allows for an allotment of 15 minutes and is comprised of two parts. The first is reserved for questions directly related to agenda items. And if there's time remaining, questions may be on a matter of public interest related to and in the CVRD's jurisdiction.
Question period. I was going to call a break, but as it's only Mr. Evans and maybe Ms. Barnard, we'll carry on here.
Mr. Chair, I'm Cliff Evans from Shawnigan Lake. Mr. Chair, it seems that the provincial government is downloading a lot of stuff on the local governments, especially when they come up and say we should increase our building by 15%. Is there any mechanism where the CVRD can go back and say, yes, we'll do the 15%, but how about 15% for infrastructure? Because our roads are getting just horribly full.
Good question. I think the only one that I can think of is and you're right about being the province bringing some of the costs down onto us, and I'm trying to think of the phrase that Director Morrison brought up with us taking all the heat and having to spend all the money, and it's quite appropriate. I think really the only place is UBCM that we could bring this up, or with other avenues. Can I take that under advisement and see what I can find out for you, Mr. Evans? But I think, I can't think of any other avenues where we can go to the province and say, give us some more money or give us some more help. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Okay.
And a follow-up, Mr. Chair, on your community funds, growing the community funds, I noticed on the rail trail project, to date, has been spent $432,180, and unspent is $617,860. In light of the ICF not knowing what we're going to do, would it not be wise to hold on this spending until ICF makes a decision? Because we're liable to get this rail trail put all the way through by provincial or maybe federal government. What would happen to these funds then? Do we lose them, or can they be kept until the provincial and federal government make a decision on the ICF?
Another good question. I'm going to dig into that one for you and find out.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and I apologise for not having a direct answer for you, Mr. Evans, but that one needs a little bit of thinking about, I think.
No problem, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Barnard, are you going to, you're not? Okay, anyone online, Mr. Robbins?
No one online.
Okay, so we move on from question period.
Moving to a closed session and a motion to close the meeting to the public under Section 90 of the Community Charter. Two items, CSR 1, a litigation or potential litigation affecting the CBRD, and item CSR 2, a law enforcement matter.
Moved, seconded. All those in favour? Moving into close. Thank you. And do we log out and log back in again?
You can stay in this particular meeting. I see that Director Stone is still with us remotely, and so you can just stay within this
Okay.
WebEx.
Thank you.